Good morning. After a break, we are back to doing some hands. First hand, Jack 8, 10 NL game. Under the gun, we just fold. Cut off open raises, and then we get a 3-bet. So cut off plains 24-9. I do have quite a few hands on him. I do have him listed as more on the passive side. A lot of that is, not necessarily open raising, especially from early position. He does play. He does a limp quite a bit in early position. Once we get to later position, then it seems to flip. He tends to be more raising more first in than limping. But have over 700 hands on him in the cutoff. Raise first in 22%, so it's going to be around there. I went ahead and scaled it something like this: 22%. 22%. They added these hands and didn't include small pocket pairs. I went ahead and made sure I included it. It's a Jack 8 just always looks odd. I will keep it in, so 21.9%. Then we get a 3-bet. We have 351 hands on him. We've got a 3-bet 1 out of 44 times. The only hands that we've seen him 3-bet is kings and ace-6 suited. We've got both of those, so kings plus ace-king suited. And then we have a 4 range. So based on a 4 range, it does look like he's going to play somewhat of a wider range. We've got a called 2-bet from blinds that include kings and 10s. So he obviously has raised those. He's obviously has 3-bet those. So when we look at this, possibly scale this. Maybe do sometimes he bets, sometimes he doesn't. But I need to make sure I have the a6. I think based on his stats, I would have just done like kings plus ace king, and actually could have just been kings and aces. But he has that a6 in there, so sometimes he's going to be 3-betting those, and that's just going to make it less likely that he has any of these hands compared to aces and kings. So I'm just going to go with this range. Player calls. Does he call with the same range? Possibly. He's got a fold 3-bet stat of 50%. So I think if we look to, do we have that stat? I don't know if we have that stat. Yeah, we do. Fold, steal the 3-bet from the cutoff. We don't have that stat. Okay. Yeah, cutoff. Here it is, fold to steal, 1 out of 1. So he is capable of folding. So I would say he's probably, folding some of these weaker hands here. I'm probably keeping with all of the pocket pairs. Tightening up, let's say 16%. All right, flop comes down to 9-8. So 10 hearts, 9 of diamonds, 8 spades. And it is blind. He bets 16. So back on the flop, remember it was a 3 big blinds and then a mid raise. And now we have an overbet here. This overbet on a straight looking board, to me, suggests that this is a player that has some hand that is vulnerable. He doesn't want like the straight to draw to it. Like a hand like ace jack, he's scared of ace jack calling, so he's betting bigger to try to force the action. To me, that seems like it would be not necessarily top pair hand, but over pair. Could be a set or a straight. I don't think he does that with any of the open enders. And even with the straights, would he really bet that large with the straight? It could if he does have at the bottom end, but we don't have any of those hands. So I'm gonna actually knock this down and say I don't think he's going to be doing this very often. We'll say 1/3 of the time he would do that with the straight. Let's get that one to 1/3. So that just leaves a set in the overpair. We'll do that. Villain calls. Alright, so now what is he calling? He called the overbet. I think easily he calls with straight. I think the set probably just calls. That sizing, 150% just seems, I think it's going to freeze a lot of people, make them scared of raising with their like sets and 2-pair. Or I think overpair calls. I think a top pair calls as well. I don't think any of like the weaker stuff calls. And then we have the 1-card straights. So I'm not even sure if the 7s would call. I don't think any of the gut shots are calling. So we'll keep that range. Board pairs with the 8. That I think tells me everything we need to know. So at this point, I think he's probably still betting the full house. He sizes down at that point. His goal is to get that stack, so I think he probably would bet the same amount, maybe 15, and hope that he raises. So I don't think he has a full house. I think the straight's becoming a lot less likely at this point. Not only was he going to bet smaller, but at this point, I think he's probably going to bet again if he has a straight. And that's, I think, what we're going to do. We're going to exclude it. So that really just leaves an overpair in his range. And that's basically his entire overpair hand. Now, this villain checks. I don't think he's checking quads. I don't really think he's checking a full house here. And I'm not even sure if he's checking a straight. 3 of a kind could easily check. Kind of hope to get paid. But I kind of expect 3 of a kind to be betting in this spot. Overpair's probably just going to go for a check. Probably just a check, like a check call. And all of the straight draws, I think, are still going to be in his range. So we're going to do that. Get rid of those. Looks good. 5 of diamonds. Villain 4 checks again. I just think that reinforces the overpair. Villain 1 checks. So this villain 1 had like range of hands. If he bet, if the blind bet, what hands are going to fold, I think he's getting a fold by basically all of these. I think maybe a top pair could call if he bets smaller. If he bets like 15, I think a top pair is probably going to call, which means he's getting paid with his overpair. However, most of it, yeah, this would be a value call. So anytime this guy has an overpair, I think aces and kings probably should bet to get value, because he's going to get value from top pair, he's going to get value from the 10-9, and he's going to probably get value from the jacks and queens. So he missed. This guy checked. Do I think he should bet? Probably ace king. Probably just aces, because I think jacks, queens, and kings will call. Kings are kind of in the cutoff, like 50-50 range maybe. We kind of have an idea that he has just called with aces and kings before, so kind of hesitant to really bet with the kings because I don't know. Maybe you do. There's fewer aces and kings and more jacks and queens, so maybe you do bet aces and kings for a little bit of value. But they didn't. So this guy shows king jack, so that was definitely in his range. King jack suited, and he had the kings of hand. So it was one of the hands that was in the notes. So I kind of think like once he checks the turn, normally you would fire the turn at that point. Like he showed a aggression by leading out, so he 3-bet and then he leads and he led over pot, and then all of a sudden he checks and he checks to him. Based on the range, I'm thinking so normally that's a great situation for him to bet and bet on the larger size because it really looks like he made a C bet. Turn didn't improve, and now it's just going to be a check fold. But in this case, because the board paired, I think the reason he didn't bet here was because he was scared. He was scared of trips, scared of like the made straight or something like that. So with his open-ended straight draw, I don't think it would be appropriate for him to bet. GTO might disagree, but I think just like exploitatively, I see a lot of 3-bets, they bet, and then on the turn they check. And you can pick up the bet with the bet. You can pick up the pot by betting at that spot, but then you have to really be careful with those player boards because they panic and they freak and they think, oh no, guy has 3 of a kind or the guy has a full house, so then they shut down. So if he bets, I think kings is probably still going to call. He only has 48 left. There's 40 in the pot, so if he shoves, he's going to think about it, and my guess is he'll probably lean towards a call. So let's get some notes on him, on both of these players. So he RFI 3 big blinds and cut off and call min raise and called BB min raise with king jack diamonds. He is in position, and he called 150%, then check on 10 hearts, 9 of diamonds, 8 of spades, 8 of clubs, 5 of diamonds. All right, we've got that guy. All right, so here's a note right here. He flopped 2 pair and never bet on that monotone flop. He was scared of a flush. So I think it just fits with his persona. Board paired, he got scared, and just decided to give it up. Okay, so he 3-bet in big blind versus cutoff steal. Here he 3-bet min raise in big blind versus cutoff 3 big steal with king of spades, king of clubs. He is out of position. He bet 150%, check. All right. So yeah, I don't necessarily like the overbet. I think the overbet kind of gives away your hands. I mean, I agree. He probably needs to bet. He needs to do a C bet. We're gonna go back here, but the pot's 10. He could easily do a C bet of 5. Half pot. I think he's just gonna call, and that allows you then to, for villain forward, just to go ahead and kind of bet maybe 10 at this point, maybe a quarter size down, or you can go up to 15, and he's going to call again. Yeah, let's see here, 5, so then pot's 10, or the pot's 20. Yeah, then you can kind of bet 15 at this point. And if you get raised, then yeah, you probably have a decision. Is he raising because he has trips? And more than likely, at least a 10-0. Yeah, that's going to be true. Tougher players, not necessarily. They could be They could be raising at that point with Jack 10. Um, but you get 15, and then on the 5 of diamonds, I think you could probably check if you think he's gonna bet, and then call it. So um, I think that's probably how I would have played this guy's hands. So hopefully you enjoy this. If you do, look tomorrow for another.